everyone. Welcome to Gain Superpowers. Elevate your team with LinkedIn Talent Insights. We're so excited to see you here today, and I have the pleasure of introducing today's speakers, Neal Folk from Stryker, as well as Alex Pack and Dan Francis from LinkedIn. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. As Grace mentioned, my name is Alex Pack, joined by Dan Francis and Neal Folk from Stryker. Today, we're going to be talking to you about LinkedIn Talent Insights. I hope all of you were as excited as I was to see the keynote earlier today. I mean, I was super hyped seeing the talk. Eric and Kate did an amazing job, but we also know they didn't have a lot of time to go into details about the product. And so our hope today is to have a little bit of fun, inform you about the product, and we'll go through a product overview. Neal will come up and share with you her story at Stryker, and we'll close by answering as many questions as we can get to. But to start, you might be wondering why Dan and I are wearing these capes. Well, the goal of Talent Insights is to give you and your team superpowers and help you become heroes for your organization. Now, I know what you're thinking. Data, insights, doesn't sound like the coolest superpowers, right? I get it. But bear with us for over the course of this talk, because we're going to try to convince you otherwise. The funny thing is, when I first chose this slide, Dan and I actually had a little bit of an argument over who got to be Batman and who got to be Superman, because we both wanted to be Batman. I think I clearly won.
Yeah. We actually flipped a coin.
And the reason we both want to be Batman is because he's a lot more like us. He doesn't fly, he doesn't have super strength, he doesn't shoot lasers from his eyes, but he's still a great hero. And the reason he's a hero is because he's the world's greatest detective. He takes in information from a lot of different sources, uses it to devise winning strategies that allows him to defeat his enemies time and time again. In my mind, Batman would have been a great talent professional. And our hope with LinkedIn Talent Insights is to give you the tools and capabilities to form winning talent strategies and in some small way become more like Batman. Now, let's imagine for a minute if I took all the rich talent data that we have on LinkedIn, from our hundreds and millions of members, their skills, their work experiences, their companies, their industries, their education, all of it, and we put it into that little box. That box would represent a meaningful percentage of the global talent workforce, but more powerful than that, it would hold the answers to many of your most important questions. But if I offered to give you that box, I think you'd be pretty excited. Most of you wouldn't be able to access what's inside it, which is frustrating. That's the state of talent data today. We know the answers are out there somewhere. It's just really hard to get at. And every day, your teams, your colleagues, your peers, your executives ask you really important questions like, are we looking at the right criteria for open recs that we need to hire for immediately? How are we doing versus our peers or our competitors? Where should we open our next office or location? And on and on and on. And all of you have great experiences and really good instincts, and so you do your best to answer based on those things. But wouldn't life be so much easier? Wouldn't it be so much more powerful if you could pair those instincts with real data, with insight? So that's our goal. But there's also one complication. Accessing this data is really hard. It really doesn't fit in a pretty little box with a bow tied on it. The global data of talent is made up of billions and billions of pieces of information that are updated every single day in real time. And in fact, the world of talent data looks a lot more like, well, this. And in order to sort through this mess, you need dedicated teams of data scientists. And I don't know about you, but I'm guessing most of you don't have large data science teams dedicated to talent acquisition. But like Kate mentioned earlier, we do, and we're going to put them to work for you. We're going to put them to work for you to extract from this big, messy pile of data insight, meaning, things that are actionable for you and your teams. So not only do we want to give you access to all the rich talent data that we have on LinkedIn, not only do we want to pair it with insight and meaning extracted by our data scientists, but we want to go one step further. We want to identify for you the questions you might not have asked us for yet and the answers to those questions. Remember when Kate talked about the thousands and thousands of questions that her and her teams have been receiving each year? Well, it was a ton of work for her and her team, but the good news for us was from that we were able to understand what are common questions that top companies are asking, and how can we build those in directly into the product with their respective answers. So I know in the beginning I started by saying I'm going to give you superpowers and help you become heroes. And yes, that was a little tongue-in-cheek. But all of you in this room are already heroes. You're responding to a specific calling to connect people with opportunity, which is why it's so meaningful for Dan and I to be standing here representing this product for you. With that, I want to introduce my colleague Dan Francis, Product Manager at LinkedIn Talent Insights.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here speaking with you on behalf of the LinkedIn Talent Insights product team. And as Alex mentioned, our goal here is to give you superpowers. And in a few moments, I'm going to show you exactly how we hope to accomplish that. Now, earlier at today's keynote, you heard from Eric and Kate, and they walked through the product at a high level, give you a sense of the product features that we'll be providing. In this session, we're going to deep dive into one specific scenario. We're going to show you how LinkedIn Talent Insights can help inform your recruiting strategy. And you'll probably notice as we go through these mocks that we're actually talking about the talent pool that we talked about today at the keynote, so electrical engineers in Europe. But I want you to rest assured that we have way more than just electrical engineers on LinkedIn. So with that, let's begin. I'd like you to meet Sarah. Sarah is the Director of Talent Acquisition at a company called CodeLane. And Sarah partners with Ellen, who's the VP of Engineering. Now imagine that it's Monday morning, and as Sarah's drinking her morning coffee, she sees an urgent email come in from Ellen. Ellen needs to hire 60 electrical engineers in order for her to meet her hiring timeline, in order for her to reach her production timeline. But she's having a ton of trouble recruiting for these roles at their current offices in London. And so she's asking for Sarah's help. She's wondering what changes do they need to make in their recruiting strategy in order to fulfill these roles. And Sarah's an experienced professional. She's a handful of questions that she knows to ask. How big is this talent pool? Are there other locations, companies, industries that she should consider recruiting from? And how much of this talent has she already engaged with on LinkedIn today? Previously, the answers to these questions would have been hidden in a haystack of 1 million data points across many different data sources. It would have taken her hours to pull this information together. But now, with LinkedIn Talent Insights, the answers are at her fingertips. She logs into the product, and as you can see, she can search by skill or title in order to better understand a specific talent pool. Or she can search by company if she'd like to better understand a specific organization. Now in this case, Sarah's trying to better understand the pool of talent of electrical engineers in Europe, and so she starts there. She enters in the title, electrical engineer. This time she enters in several skills related to process control, the specific type of engineer she's looking for. And she filters by Europe. You'll notice that along the way, we guide her by informing exactly the number of professionals on LinkedIn that match the criteria. She then clicks Generate Report. Here you see a quick summary of the talent pool. Now, I want to point out a few things about this report. First, on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we have a familiar search interface, much like Recruiter, that allows you to precisely define the talent pool that you're after. And looking in the middle of the report, you can see several key stats about this talent. For example, Sarah learns that there are roughly 64,000 electrical engineers in Europe that meet this criteria, and that 21% of them have changed jobs in the last year, making this a fairly active talent pool. And looking below this, Sarah can also see the top companies, the top locations, companies, and industries that employ this talent to date. She's excited to learn that Athens and Dublin actually have more professionals that meet her criteria than London does, which is a surprise and helpful as she thinks about adjusting her recruiting strategy. Sarah can also see that oil and energy and semiconductors are the top industries that employ this talent today. And as she considers expanding her search, this helps her prioritize. Now, Sarah continues to scroll down on the report, and here she can see exactly how much of this talent has engaged with their company on LinkedIn. These are the professionals that have viewed their company page, that have viewed or applied to jobs, that have engaged with recruiters. And she's excited to learn that while 6,000 of these professionals have already taken action, it's actually only 9% of the total talent pool. And so this gives her the confidence to know that there are far more professionals that she can go after. Sarah scrolls back up, and as she looks over on the right-hand side, she can also see key stats about this talent and who these professionals are. She's excited to learn that roughly 2,000 of these engineers have actually raised their hand. They're open to new opportunities. And about 1,000 are actually connected to employees at CodeLane. And these are great ways for her and her team to prioritize outreach. And if they'd like to do so directly, Sarah and her team can just click the View and Recruiter button in order to get started and contact these people. Below this is a summary of key insights. The first one, locations to consider, catches Sarah's eye. She sees that Athens and Helsinki actually have high supply relative to the demand in these locations. And again, this is another way for her to think about prioritizing locations for her to recruit. She wants to learn more, and so clicks to dive in. And this takes her from the overview page to the location page. Here, Sarah can see a map that displays exactly where this talent is located, and below this, a table that provides a lot more detail on each location. She can see the number of professionals, how this is changing over time. She can see the number of job posts, the level of demand that there is in each location, and finally, the top employers that she'd be potentially recruiting from or competing against for talent. If Sarah wants, she can easily download this information, or she can save this as an image if she'd like to include it in a presentation. And also, as Eric showed you, you can actually export this entire thing as a PDF if that's helpful. Now, Sarah scrolls down, and she sees more information that's incredibly helpful in informing her recruiting strategy, migration trends. Here, Sarah can see the top locations where there's migration to and from London. And she's excited to learn that several of these cities are actually located in Turkey. And so this is yet another way for her to think about prioritizing her outreach and where she wants to source. Sarah has the information she needs to get back to Ellen. She drafts up an email. Hi, Ellen. Hope you had a great weekend. I've completed my research, and here are my findings, which she lists out below. She sends this off to Ellen, and Ellen replies, Hi, Sarah. Thanks for pulling together this research so quickly. Ellen agrees with Sarah's recommendations, and in fact, as I'm sure is often the case with critical roles, Ellen's actually decided to share some of this information with Bruce, who's the CEO of CodeLane. Looks like a note from Bruce. Let's see what he has to say. All right, so Bruce says, Hi, Sarah. Great work on this report. But as is often the case when you do great work, Bruce now has a follow-up request. So Bruce wants to better understand a specific competitor. So in this case, it's Flexus. And Flexus also competes against CodeLane for recruiting talent, for engineering talent. And Bruce would like to better understand the skills of Flexus's engineering workforce, as well as how this compares to his own company. Again, this would have taken Sarah hours upon hours, if at all, in order to pull together this information. But with LinkedIn Talent Insights, she knows immediately where to go to get this information. She logs into the product, and here she sees, she logs into the product, searches for Flexus, and this generates the report. Now, Sarah's looking for something very specific. She wants to better understand the talent flows for their engineering org. And so she applies the filter engineering as a function, and then navigates over to the talent flows tab. Here, Sarah can actually see the top companies from which Flexus is winning and losing talent. She takes note of the first three, which are Freshing, ZoomJax, and Mintom. She then moves on to Bruce's second question, which is around skills. She navigates back up, and then moves over to the Skills Inventory tab. Here, Sarah can see the top skills of this workforce. She notices that C, C++, embedded systems, and Verilog are actually the top skills that Flexus Engineering has. And if you look over on the right-hand side, you'll see these blue and gray bars. The blue bars show the percentage of Flexus talent that has these skills, while the gray bar shows that same stat, but for Sarah's own company. And by looking at these gaps, Sarah can actually see which skills they've got comparable levels of talent. So in this case, C, C++ are pretty similar, but also where there are gaps. So the second two, embedded systems and Verilog, here she can actually see, hey, these are places where actually Flexus has a lot more skilled employees in versus Codelane. And in fact, some of these, for example, embedded systems, are actually growing pretty quickly. And while we're on the topic of skills, I actually want to talk a little bit about some of the investments that we're making here to build an even more robust data set. So we know that members may not have all of their skills listed on their profiles. Earlier today at the keynote, you heard from John talking about the AI revolution. Well, we're also leveraging the latest machine learning techniques to extract potential skills from other information we know about a member, the text on their profile, their title, their company, the field of study, and more. We also know that sometimes members are endorsed for skills that they may not have, or from people who aren't qualified to make that endorsement. Now, I love my parents dearly, and if they're watching now, hi, Mom and Dad. But I'm not sure that they're qualified to actually endorse me for product management. And I suspect many of you here would agree. And that's why we're also developing systems that allow us to assess how likely it is a member is to have the skill that they've been endorsed for. So with that, let me dive back into the demo. So Sarah has the information she needs to get back to Bruce. She says, hi, Bruce. Attaches my report on Flexus. And she shares her findings. Now, Bruce had mentioned, I need this information as soon as possible, but until end of week is fine. Sarah didn't need the week. She could pull this information immediately. And as she sends it off, she immediately hears back from Bruce. Wow, that was fast. And yes, it was, thanks to LinkedIn Talent Insights. So there you have it, a brief demo of LinkedIn Talent scenario here. And I'm sure many of you have questions. I invite you to visit us actually at the LinkedIn Talent Insights booth outside of the In Lounge, where you'll be actually able to play with the product in a lot more detail and answer any questions. And Alex and I and the rest of the team will be happy to answer any questions you might have. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alex.
Thanks, Dan. The product is looking incredible, and I can totally see that this is going to be a game changer for the talent industry. So Dan just showcased two really powerful examples. One, which is using LinkedIn Talent Insights to inform a recruiting strategy for open roles that you need to hire for immediately. And the second one was a more strategic use case, advising a CEO about competitive talent flows. But I want to share with you how LinkedIn has been using this data to inform one of our most critical decisions. So a couple years ago, you may not know, LinkedIn was facing a problem, which is that our engineering attrition rates were starting to increase and our offer acceptances were declining. Now, LinkedIn has long been seen as one of the best companies to work for in the Bay Area, so this is really concerning for us because we rely on the ability to attract and retain top technical talent in order to continue innovating and growing as a company. So we wanted to understand what was the root cause of this. Our instincts told us that it was probably due to compensation because, to be honest with you, in Silicon Valley, everything is due to compensation. But we really wanted to know, have the data to validate those instincts before making a recommendation to senior leadership. So we pulled reports very similar to what Dan showed. We pulled a talent pool report for technical talent in the Bay Area, and we also pulled our own talent flows to see which companies are people joining after leaving LinkedIn. This is what we discovered. We discovered that increasingly, the talent that we're looking for was migrating north from San Jose to San Francisco. And increasingly, the companies that were winning talent from us were companies such as Airbnb, Uber, and Pinterest that also have San Francisco headquarters. And finally, across the many brand metrics that we were tracking, LinkedIn was extremely competitive, but two areas stood out as areas of opportunity: compensation and commute. Aha, compensation. It's always compensation, right? Well, in this case, we were wrong. Turns out for this cohort of talent, LinkedIn was on the very top end of the compensation scale. But what this told us was something extremely important. It told us that among the technical talent in the Bay Area that we were targeting, there was a misperception. There was a misperception about the competitiveness of LinkedIn's compensation, and we were able to put action directly against that using our talent branding efforts. As far as commute goes, we talked to our engineers located in our Silicon Valley offices to understand their satisfaction with commute, which was pretty low. And I can attest, as a Bay Area resident, if you want to live in San Francisco and commute to Sunnyvale, where we're based, you're going to spend upwards of 3 to 4 hours a day on a bus. It's a pretty tough commute. And so armed with this qualitative feedback that we're hearing from our employees, and having the data about the trends in this marketplace and where the skills were that we needed to grow in the future, we made the recommendation to leadership that, hey, we should open a second office in San Francisco. Now, on paper, this is a crazy kind of recommendation to make because the two offices would only be about 30, 39 miles apart. But having the data, understanding where the trends in the industry were heading, and understanding what are the skills we need to attract and retain in order to be competitive, not just next year, but for the decades ahead, it gave us the confidence to make this recommendation. And leadership agreed. And soon afterwards, they built this office. This office has actually only been open in San Francisco for about 1.5 years now, and already we're seeing meaningful decreases in attrition among the engineering teams that work out of San Francisco. And in fact, the very team that's working to build out LinkedIn Talent Insights for you today works out of that office. That's why we're so excited about this product. We've seen firsthand the power of this information to change the way that decisions are made at your company. But we also know that having the data, the platform, the capabilities is only one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is making sure that you have an organization that's ready to take on this information and use it to grow your influence. So the next person I want to introduce is someone who's been a real hero for her organization and has seen firsthand the transformation that's taking place within talent acquisition. So please welcome to the stage to Neal Folk, Director of Talent Branding at Stryker.
Wow. Thank you, Dan and Alex, for inviting me to talk with you all today. When they asked me to do it, I did not realize how big a drop this was going to be today until I was sitting in the main session. And then when we walked over here, I was like, you guys sold me something completely different. So I'm also glad that you went with the Lego version of Wonder Woman versus the Gal Gadot version of Wonder Woman. Quick poll, how many saw the Wonder Woman movie this year? Yeah, I don't think any human could compete with her, so I'm glad we set the bar a little bit lower. Earlier this summer, I got an opportunity to get a sneak peek into what is now Talent Insights, and I was really excited, as data is a big part of my life, to see that LinkedIn was considering the option of giving us kind of a one-stop shop ability to go after that data ourselves instead of counting on them to kind of run the reports and waiting for that. So I was really excited to see that. Data, to me, is more important in TA now more than ever. We've been talking about big data for years. How many people have been coming to Talent Connect and been hearing about data, right? Like that was a big conversation point a couple of years ago now. So it's actually one of my mantras at work this year is, I call it data-driven decisions. Anyone heard that before? Yeah, I didn't coin it and I didn't copyright it, but don't tell anyone at Stryker that because this is a relatively new concept for our business, relating it specifically to talent acquisition. And so it's been an interesting journey in bringing numbers into the conversations with them, but I think they're at a point where they're really receptive, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So obviously, with any good superhero story, you have to have a hero, but you also have to have a villain, yes. And our villain, or villains in this case, are probably very similar to a lot of yours out there, right? I'm talking to you, sexy tech companies with your compensation you're throwing around in your nap rooms, in your ping pong tables. Sorry, guys. So we have a couple of sites in the Bay Area at Stryker, and they were obviously most affected by what was happening in the Valley. But we need to hire tech talent across the US. And so for us, oh, wrong way. Okay, tech difficulties. Anyway, moving on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So one of my goals this year in talent branding is to be working with our robotic-assisted surgery division, who needs to entice software engineers to Stryker. So quick poll, you guys didn't know this was going to be so interactive, but it's right after lunch, so we got to keep things lively, right? Okay, so show of hands, who has heard of Stryker before Alex just said it about 15 minutes ago? Okay, how many of you, keep your hands up, if you are in the healthcare, pharma, medical device world, put your hands down. Okay, and if anyone has a family member or has seen someone in a Stryker bed or has a hip or something like that, put your hands down. Okay. Well, this makes me feel good. I feel like I can keep my job for a little bit longer because some of you know who we are. I would love to talk with you a little bit on what you know. But the biggest challenge for the robotics team is location. So they are in Fort Lauderdale, which you'll see right there on the screen. And Fort Lauderdale is a great place to vacation in a long Midwest winter, not necessarily known as a hotbed of tech talent, right? So as I started having conversations with them, it was clear I needed to do some homework. I needed to learn more about the location. I needed to learn more about the market. And so I reached out to a bunch of external vendors, LinkedIn, of course, being one of them, and started digging through the data. And what I was trying to find out is, who is the audience we're trying to find? Where are they? What are they open to hearing? Are they willing to relocate? Or what do we need to say to get them to even consider it? And so pulling all of that data together, it started to give me a glimpse into who that audience was and how we were going to go after them. Having all that data also was a great business case to present to the business itself and saying, here's the problem that you have, and let's start talking about solutions. And oh, by the way, you're going to have to pony up some of the budget to be able to do that too. Which they did. I'm excited. So coming in early 2018, we'll start to see some of the fruits of that labor. So if you're a Stryker follower, you'll be able to see some of the work that's coming out of that. I'm pretty excited about it. That's all I'm going to say. The other part with a superhero story is that there's always a kind of internal struggle and personal triumph that happens when you've got heroes and villains and superheroes and whatnot. And so in 2016, we, the TA organization, kind of looked inside ourselves and said, do we have the right delivery model of what we want to do in TA? So obviously, you all know the fight in talent has been tightening up for years. But on top of that, our customers, our business partners, were actually saying, we want more from TA. We don't want you to be the order takers that you have been in the past. We need you to be partners, and we need you to be experts. So we worked together with Wilson HCG on a large consulting project, which included interviews with business leaders, with HR partners, with our own TA members. We looked at the competitive landscape and decided that we needed to make some changes. And in doing so, we wanted to allow our TA team members to become better experts in what they do. So some of this will not be rocket science to many people in this room if you've worked in recruiting for a while. We built out a separate sourcing team. So their world is really external search and RPO strategies. We built out an inbound recruiting team, and their world is looking at active applicants that are coming through the ATS, as well as digging and sourcing within our current candidate databases, so within the ATS and Talent Network. And then we also built our talent acquisition business partners, also known as TABPs. And this that you see here is one of 2 fun groups of TABPs. Think of them like in an agency, they're the account manager. They are the face to the hiring manager and the HR partners through all of the discussions that need to take place with a requisition. In addition to that, they have to be the labor market experts, right? They have to have the knowledge to be able to go in and help them figure out the right strategy for the role and set the right expectations in the beginning, which means we are not going to close your software engineer job in less than 30 days, right? It's just not going to happen. But you need the data to be able to do that. So when I started talking about talent insights with the guys, and I was really thinking about this could be so impactful for those TABPs because it is literally real-time information, and on the fly, in that strategy session, they can be making tweaks and changes and be able to have something really snazzy to come out in that conversation and hopefully, drive expectations again in that conversation. So that's kind of our data story. I'm excited about the new tool. I think it's going to be really impactful in our new service delivery model in TA. It's certainly going to help from a branding perspective in helping to figure out audiences and platforms and delivery and things like that as well. So I won't say that we are perfect superheroes. We're probably more like maybe like a classier Deadpool or like a clumsy Spider-Man, but we're getting there. We're making adjustments. We're changing when we need to and when we think we need to, and we'll be, I think, delivering capes to our team relatively soon. So there you go.
Thank you to Neal for sharing with us your story. And with that, we'd love to open it up for questions. We have 2 standing mics on either side of the aisle. And then you can ask any of us, to Neal, myself, and Dan will all be up here.
Tremendous presentation. Some of us can understand where some of your data comes from, location, what companies they came and went to. But how are you getting compensation data and some of the branding, job satisfaction elements that aren't typically seen as part of your data profile? Where are you grabbing that from? And finally, when you think about the predictive aspects of what you're trying to do, it's clear that the IT side has a good outlook for that. But when you think about all the other types of jobs that we recruit for, what's your thought about how those predictive indexes will evolve? So thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. So I think first question was around compensation. So a couple notes on compensation. LinkedIn is actually reaching out to members directly in order to collect compensation data. At this point, we've got about 3 million results from the survey, and we're actually scaling that up pretty dramatically over the course of the rest of 2017 as well as 2018. The second question was around, elements, talent brand. So the second question around talent branding, we actually survey several 100,000 members every year to get their response to how they believe their own company as well as several other companies measure against these dimensions. And that's actually another survey that we'll be scaling up over time. And the last one about prediction as well as the members, right? So again, this may not be as well known, but actually about 80% of the world's professional workforce is represented well on LinkedIn. And if you are actually having success recruiting with Recruiter with these functions, we expect that you will also be able to see success with LinkedIn Talent Insights.
Good afternoon. I guess with Stryker, I had a question. You mentioned building the case, and I guess my question is, how long did it take to build the case? Was it like, setting an expectation with your executives, it's going to take 3 months, 6 weeks? Obviously, they want the information immediately, but understanding insight is on the way. But before that, how long did it take you guys to build that?
I'm Must be the unlucky tech person today. So the business case. So, you know, we worked with LinkedIn, so we use the talent intelligence reports that some of you might be familiar with. We also used Glassdoor data. We worked with Career Builder on some data. And in order to pull those reports, it was taking, you know, several days probably to get that from your vendor, who's then probably got to go to their insights team, who's got to pull that, and it's going to come back through. So it would take a few days to be able to pull the data as we had it before. And then, of course, you want to pretty it up, right? So you're going to pull it out, and you're going to do your screenshots, and you're going to put it into something really slick and snazzy that's probably branding approved to be able to share with your hiring managers and HRBPs. But we also had an expectation that we were turning stuff around to our business partners pretty quickly. So it usually entailed kind of a two-step process. So we would provide for them what we could on the fly, which was usually there's the LinkedIn data when you do a search, right? I'm blanking on what it was called. I don't know. But they would give you some graphs, right? So we would provide that up front and maybe some data out of a couple other places. And then there would be a follow-up where we were getting the more intense data out of the other reports as well. So usually take maybe about a week for a turnaround.
So my question is for Wonder Woman first. But let me tell you my takeaway, and then I'll pose a question. Okay. So there's a lot of data that we'll be able to extract as far as the pool. How big is the talent pool? Are there other locations that we can extract them from? What industries are recruiting that same skills? And then you were saying with the data, and I'm not sure if, here's the question. Okay. You said once you're looking at your talent pool report, what do you need to say to pull them? Now, is that something that you were getting from LinkedIn, or are you getting that information? What do you need to say in order to capture their attention?
Well, that's the secret sauce, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what every branding person's dream come true would be, if there was some sort of system you could put this all in and it would spit it out and say, here's your tagline, right? So I wish it was that easy. So for us, we would use this type of data to pull in the location, the companies that they're at. And then I work closely with my LinkedIn partners, so we do sponsored content and sponsored updates behind the scenes in a targeted fashion. So we would use that data to say, okay, well, they're probably between, let's say, 21 to 24, and they're online on Mondays, usually from 1 to 3 right after lunch. So let's hit them with some content at that time frame. And we're also using, like, what I don't think we've quite seen yet is, like, there's, like, it'll tell you, like, publications that they follow and leaders that they follow and things like that. So you know kind of where they're hanging out, and you know what they're kind of interested in too. So, and then there's also data in there that's telling you what are the top 5 most important things to this group, this demographic, right? So it could be compensation, it could be work-life balance, and it could be, maybe it's commute. So now you know the top 3 things that are probably most important to that demographic, and you can start shaping your message around those too.
Any other questions?
This may be the unfair question to ask the product folks, but 2 questions. When are we going to get it? And 2, is it going to be an additional cost, or is it going to be embedded within Recruiter?
So we are building this as a standalone product and a separate pricing model. We're actually just in the process of developing our pricing model, so we'll be able to share more with you early next year. And then in terms of availability, we're doing early testing with a handful of clients starting at the end of this month, but we'll shoot for middle of next year in the summer in terms of a wider release.
So thank you. This is very exciting to look at. One of the things we've noticed, we use a similar tool, which is Talent Neuron. And as you get outside the US, the integrity of the data, when we go into Brazil or even India, isn't as robust. So as you think about the product, will there be an ability to understand where the data integrity is lacking and where you have, I guess, greater confidence that the data is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to make sure that one of our core principles is that we're very transparent at the coverage of the different markets. Actually, India and Brazil are two of our strongest and fastest growing markets, but we also definitely understand that there's markets where our member growth is not as strong. And so that is definitely a core element. Talent Neuron is a great product, and I think they offer a different value proposition in the sense that they're compiling government reports such as census
different
data.
source of data.
Exactly, and you know, a census, the last census was 7 years ago, and while the coverage is complete, our value is around, it is real-time member data that we're surfacing for you.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Hi there. I also have a data-related question. Wanted to know how dependent the Insights platform is on users keeping their profiles really up to date. I would imagine that that's kind of where some of the data is coming from, as well as companies may not have all of their jobs posted on LinkedIn, and so wanted to understand how that impacts what you're sharing with us today.
Sure, absolutely. So some of the data comes from LinkedIn member profiles. On top of the data that we already have that's sort of extracted, we're also doing other analysis on top of it, right? So I think I mentioned, for example, we know a member may not have all of their skills listed on their profile, and so we're actually looking at other information that they provided, other information we know about the member in order to infer that. Now, on the topic of jobs, that's a great one, because we actually work with many leading ATSs and job boards to collect more than 11 million jobs on LinkedIn. So these aren't just the jobs that are posted on LinkedIn. And in fact, globally, this makes LinkedIn one of the largest job aggregators in the world. Again, something that isn't widely publicized, but is true. And this allows us to provide you with a more comprehensive sense of demand. So we are working with other third parties to enhance our data.
All right. Thank you.
Great. I'm getting the wrap-up sign here, and so we really appreciate the time that you gave us today. I do want to make one more plug, is that if you have any other questions, Dan and I are going to be hanging out at the Insights booth all day today and tomorrow. Please ask us your hardest questions in person. In addition to that, my colleagues John Barber and Liz Farrelly are right there in the corner, and they'd love to talk to you about your experience and get some feedback from you directly about this product. So if you're interested in talking to them, probably on camera, please follow them out on the corner there.
Thank you.
Thank you.